Hello people, welcome to this session on sourcing on LinkedIn the right way. Now I have very mixed views about LinkedIn. To be honest, I do sometimes refer to it as the Blue Devil, but it is a platform that is magnificent for sourcing and recruiting, I must admit that. So it's one of those platforms that has to be part of our sourcing strategy. It shouldn't just be our only part, but more about that later. So whenever I conduct my training and I train companies all over the world, I always start with a question of where did you find the majority of your placements in the last 6 months? And the feedback that I get is always LinkedIn or a local job board, but more often than not LinkedIn. And the problem with this is that you are basically going fishing in the same fishing ponds as everybody else. So my training is all about let's look on other platforms, or let's learn to use LinkedIn really well so that we potentially don't have to spend so much money on the tool. So a couple of things about LinkedIn over here is that I just am really concerned about people's dependence on the platform. So if I was to ask you, could you still do your job if LinkedIn disappeared tomorrow? I don't know what your feedback would be, but I'd be very interested to hear it. So the thinking behind this is that if you find the person on LinkedIn, you can always go and find them on another platform. So go and see if they're on Facebook, on Twitter, run them through a Google search. What you might find then is you might actually find that they were a guest on a podcast or they presented at an event. So when you do your reach out, you can personalize your reach out to say, I listened to the podcast, or I was at the event, or I couldn't make the event, but I enjoyed your topic. So, there's a lot of different things we can do by just looking outside of LinkedIn. So remember, it has to be part of our sourcing methodologies and strategies, but it really doesn't have to be our starting and our endpoints. So by that I mean when the new role comes in, you don't automatically have to go to LinkedIn and start searching on the platform. You could actually go and start outside the platform on a search engine like Google, or you could use Bing, or there's about 35 different search engines that you could use, and you could write a Boolean search string and you could X-ray back into that platform. Now, when I talk about your endpoint, a lot of recruiters are quite happy to end that interaction with a candidate by sending them an email. Now, the reality is that candidates who are in demand are getting loads of messages and emails every day. So they're not actually getting to read them, unfortunately. So we need to think about how can we be more creative to get candidates' attention, and maybe we could be messaging them elsewhere. So that's a very important fact to remember. So let's have a look at a couple more stats around LinkedIn and its usage. And if you have a look over here, what we've got is we've got a graph that shows the most popular social networks worldwide. And this is based on active users. So note someone who went to the platform once, they signed up, and then they left, and then they forgot their password and they didn't go back. So this is by active users. These are people who are regularly on these platforms. And if you have a look, we've got Facebook in the lead by a long way. I mean, they're sitting at about, and this is back in October 2019, and there's a reason why I'm showing you such an old graph. Stick with me on this one. Facebook at that point had 2.5 billion users, and YouTube had 2 billion. So you can see that these two are really leading the charge when it comes to, the active users on those platforms. You've also got WhatsApp in third, Facebook Messenger in fourth. So 3 out of the top 4 there are actually owned by Meta. Something to think about too. So I encourage you to go and find LinkedIn. And if you find LinkedIn, you'll see that it's sitting at 310 million. Now, this is really interesting because, as mentioned, every team that I train anywhere in the world, when I say to them, where are you going to find candidates, their feedback comes back that actually they are looking on LinkedIn. Now, this problem with this is that everybody is looking on LinkedIn, and you're actually looking at a very small pool of candidates. So remember, your end goal is always to find contact details, to find an email so that you can send an email to candidates. You don't have to necessarily reach out to them on the platform, but you need to think about using the internet more holistically. So you could find them on Facebook, cross-reference them on LinkedIn, or you could find them on LinkedIn, look at them on GitHub. So we should be using the internet a lot more in a connected manner. Now, the latest graph that I've got on this is from January 2022. Exactly the same stats, and what it's showing us is that it's the most active users worldwide. Now, if you have a look over here and you have a look at the platforms, there's no change between Facebook and YouTube and WhatsApp, right? Instagram has moved into 4th position. But the most marked difference that I want you to pay attention to now is that where is LinkedIn? Where has LinkedIn gone? And this is why I actually need to show you this graph from October 2019, because this is the last time that LinkedIn actually made an appearance on that most active social networks from a worldwide perspective. It's quite scary, isn't it? And this is a platform that everyone tells me that this is where they go and find all of their candidates and they make their placements. So I just want you to be aware that there's a whole world out there, there's a whole internet that you could be using. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So similarly, just to show you, to demonstrate this point again, I love these graphs. These are all about your internet minute and what happened in an internet minute, and they come out at the end of every year. So if we go back to 2017, this is the graphic that was produced and comes by a Visual Capitalist. And if you have a look, LinkedIn is there. So LinkedIn, there were 120 new accounts created on LinkedIn in 2017 in an internet minute. So that's big. That's a lot of people. That's really a lot of signups. But unfortunately, when you look at the most up-to-date one from the last completed year, you can see from 2021, you can see, look at the competition. So unfortunately, what you're not going to find on this graph is you're not going to find LinkedIn, which is interesting. So the problem is that LinkedIn is really great for us as recruiters and sources and talent acquisition professionals, but is it great for everyone? Where would the other people choose or rather be spending their time? Something for you to think about. So before we get into InMauling, I actually want to go and give you a little bit of a quick demonstration about how we are using the platform and how we could maybe be using it better. So this is my alter ego LinkedIn account, and the reason for this is that I'm tired of ending up in LinkedIn jail. So this is my alter ego account, which I also use to collect messages from recruiters and see how they interact with candidates online to make my training better. So if I was to run a search on this platform over here, and let me have a look for a role that I was looking for yesterday with one of my clients, and I was to say I'm looking for a compliance administrator, this is the way that you would go about it if you were searching and starting your search within the platform, which is, remember, what I recommended that you shouldn't be doing. So there we go, compliance administrator, people, and let's say that the location that I'm looking in is London. So if I go and run that search using LinkedIn, you'll see I come up with 1,700 results. Now the reality is that LinkedIn actually is strangling my results here because it's based on the size of my network. You'll also see that after the first results, I just get LinkedIn member. And the reason for that is because those people are outside of my network. They're not a first, second, or third connection of mine, so they're not going to give me the people's names. So that's not really helpful. So another thing that I want to show you is when I talk about going and starting in a different position and not starting on LinkedIn, where should you start? So we all default to Google. So let's go and have a look there. Say I'm looking for a compliance administrator and I'm looking in London. If I run that search through Google, it's actually not a like-for-like search. And the reason behind that is because I haven't directed the search to focus in any particular area. But if I was to focus it and say, actually, go and get all of the results from LinkedIn, and I structure it like that, you'll see I now end up with 12,000 results. And the reason is because I'm searching outside of LinkedIn, it's got no idea about the size of my network. So this is actually a much better set of results that I'm getting if I'm not starting my search in LinkedIn. I'm still searching on LinkedIn, but I have a different starting point. So super interesting. From here, I can open up anyone's profile, I can learn about them, I can see what they have been up to, and then from here, I would never go and try and send them an email or a message. I'd maybe try and connect with them if this is a role that I'm recruiting in within my niche, but I'm always going to be looking for an email address to get in touch with the candidate. So to go back to what I was talking about here and talking about our endpoints or InMauling, as a lot of people refer to it in the industry, is that this is something that I wouldn't really focus on doing. And the reason behind that is because people are twice as likely to respond to their email compared to LinkedIn messages and reply in up to 85% less time. Now, as we all know, recruitment's a race. It's all about speed. It's all about getting the best candidates in front of your clients in the shortest amount of time. So if you want to get a higher response rate in a shorter amount of time, let's rather not end the process with an email, giving a lot of power to LinkedIn. Let's send them an email and see what they have to say. Another perception also, fortunately for LinkedIn, coming from candidates is that they are applying for roles on LinkedIn, but they're not getting a lot of response. So this leads to almost like the dissatisfaction of candidates on the platform. They're a little bit disillusioned. They don't think it's as effective as it used to be. And that actually comes down to the users, but it kind of taints LinkedIn with a bit of a bad reputation. So just make sure that you are not Rolf, because remember, if you are Rolf, you have the potential to break the internet, because only Rolf breaks the internet. I encourage you to go and look outside of LinkedIn, use the whole internet for your searches, and make sure that you are definitely cross-referencing people across a couple of platforms before you even think about reaching out to them. So if you want to know more, if you want to learn more about how I can save you money on your LinkedIn licenses and things like that, give me a shout. These are my contact details. You are welcome to get in touch with me, whichever way is easier for you. Thanks so much.